For the last 10 or 20 minutes he had been speaking vehemently, loudly, in an impatient patter, carried away, trying to talk above them all, to outshout them, and, of course, later he would bitterly regret some of the phrases and surmises that had escaped him. If he had not been so excited and all but beside himself, he would never have permitted himself to speak some of his guesses and needless sincerities aloud so baldly and hastily. But as soon as he sat down, one burning regret painfully pierced his heart. Besides the fact that he had insulted Burdovsky by so publicly supposing him to have the same illness for which he himself had been treated in Switzerland, besides that, the offer of the 10,000 instead of the school had, in his opinion, been made crudely and carelessly, as if it were charity, and precisely in that it had been spoken aloud in front of other people. I should have waited and offered it tomorrow when we were alone, the prince thought at once, and now it's unlikely that I can put it right. Yes, I'm an idiot, a real idiot. He decided to himself in a fit of shame and extreme distress. Meanwhile Gavrila Ardalionovitch, who till then had kept himself apart and remained stubbornly silent, came forward at the prince's invitation, stood beside him, and began calmly and clearly to give an account of the affair entrusted to him by the prince. All talk instantly stopped. Everyone listened with extreme curiosity, especially Burdovsky's whole company. "9. You will not, of course, deny," Gavrila Ardalionovitch began, directly addressing Burdovsky, who was listening to him as hard as he could, his astonished eyes popping out, and was obviously in great confusion. "You will not, and will not wish, of course, to deny seriously that you were born exactly 2 years after your esteemed mother entered into lawful wedlock with the collegiate secretary Mr. Burdovsky, your father." The date of your birth is only too easy to prove factually, so that the distortion of this fact in Mr. Keller's article, so offensive to you and to your mother, can be explained only by the playful personal fantasy of Mr. Keller, who hoped thereby to strengthen the obviousness of your right and thereby contribute to your interests. Mr. Keller says that he read the article to you prior to publication, though not all of it. No doubt he stopped before reading you this part. I didn't, actually, the boxer interrupted, but I was informed of all the facts by competent persons, and I beg your pardon, Mr. Keller. Gavrila Ardalionovich stopped him. Allow me to speak. I assure you, we will get to your article in its turn, and then you can offer your explanation, but now let us proceed in order. Quite by chance, with the help of my sister, Varvara Ardalionovna Tin, I obtained from her close friend, Vera Alexeyevna Zubkov, a landowner and a widow, a letter from the late Nikolai Andreevich Pavlishchev, written to her from abroad 24 years ago. Having approached Vera Alexeyevna, I was directed by her to retired Colonel Timofey Fyodorovich Vyazovkin, a distant relation, and, in his time, a great friend of Mr. Pavlishchev. From him I managed to obtain 2 more of Nikolai Andreevich's letters, also written from abroad. These 3 letters, the dates and facts mentioned in them, prove mathematically, with no possibility of refutation or even doubt, that Nikolai Andreevich went abroad, where he spent the next 3 years, exactly a year and a half before you were born, Mr. Burdovsky. Your mother, as you know, never left Russia. I will not read these letters at the present time. It is late now. I am, in any case, only stating the fact. But if you wish to make an appointment with me, Mr. Burdovsky, say, for tomorrow morning, and bring your own witnesses, as many as you like, and experts in the identification of handwriting, I have no doubt that you will not fail to be convinced of the obvious truth of the fact of which I have informed you. And if so, then, naturally, this whole affair collapses and ceases of itself. Again a general stir and profound agitation ensued. Burdovsky himself suddenly got up from his chair. If so, then I was deceived, not by Chebarov, but long ago. I don't want any experts, I don't want any appointments, I believe you, I renounce no need for the 10,000, goodbye. He took his peaked cap and pushed a chair aside in order to leave. If you can, Mr. Burdovsky, Gavrila Ardalionovich said softly and sweetly, please stay for another 5 minutes or so. Several more extremely important facts have been discovered in this affair, quite curious ones, especially for you in any case. In my opinion, you ought without fail to become acquainted with them, and for you yourself, perhaps, it will be more pleasant if the affair is completely cleared up. Burdovsky sat down silently, bowing his head a little, as if in deep thought. After him, Lebedev's nephew, who had also gotten up to go with him, sat down again. Though he had not lost his head or his pluck, he was obviously greatly puzzled. Hippolyte was downcast, sad, and seemed very surprised. Just then, however, he began to cough so hard that he even got bloodstains on his handkerchief. The boxer was all but frightened. Antip! He cried bitterly. Didn't I tell you then, 2 days ago, that maybe in fact you're not Pavlishev's son? Suppressed laughter was heard. 2 or 3 laughed louder than the others. The fact of which you have just informed us, Mr. Keller, Gavrila Ardalionovich picked up, is a very precious one. Nevertheless, I have the full right, on the basis of very precise data, to maintain that Mr. Burdovsky, though he was, of course, only too well aware of the date of his birth, was completely unaware of the circumstances of Pavlishev's residence abroad, where Mr. Pavlishev spent the greater part of his life, never returning to Russia for more than short periods. Besides that, the very fact of his departure at that time is so unremarkable in itself that even those who knew Pavlishev intimately would hardly remember it after more than 20 years, to say nothing of Mr. Burdovsky, who was not even born yet. Of course, to obtain information now turned out to be not impossible, but I must confess that the information I received came to me quite by chance, and might very well not have come, so that for Mr. Burdovsky, and even for Chebarov, this information would indeed have been almost impossible to obtain, even if they had taken it into their heads to obtain it. But they might not have taken it into their heads. If you please, Mr. Ivolgin, Hippolyte suddenly interrupted him irritably, why all this gallimatias, forgive me? The affair has been explained. We agree to believe the main fact. Why drag out this painful and offensive rigmarole any longer? Maybe you want to boast about the deftness of your research, to show us and the prince what a good investigator and sleuth you are? Or do you mean to try to excuse and vindicate Burdovsky by the fact that he got mixed up in this affair out of ignorance? But that is impudent, my dear sir. Burdovsky has no need of your vindications and excuses, let that be known to you. He's offended, it's painful for him as it is, he's in an awkward position, you ought to have guessed, to have understood that. Enough, Mr. Terentiev, enough, Gavrila Ardalionovich managed to interrupt him. Calm down, don't get irritated, you seem to be very ill? I sympathize with you. In that case, if you wish, I'm done, that is, I am forced to convey only briefly those facts which, in my conviction, it would not be superfluous to know in all their fullness, he added, noticing a general movement that looked like impatience. I merely wish to tell you, with evidence, for the information of all those interested in the affair, that your mother, Mr. Burdovsky, enjoyed the affection and care of Pavlishchev solely because she was the sister of a house serf girl with whom Mr. Pavlishchev had been in love in his early youth, so much so that he would certainly have married her if she had not died unexpectedly. I have proofs that this family fact, absolutely precise and true, is very little known, even quite forgotten. Furthermore, I could explain how your mother, as a 10-year-old child, was taken by Mr. Pavlishchev to be brought up like a relation, that a significant dowry was set aside for her, and that all these cares generated extremely alarmed rumors among Pavlishchev's numerous relations. They even thought he might marry his ward, but in the end she married by inclination, and I can prove that in the most precise fashion, a land surveyor, Mr. Burdovsky, when she was 19. Here I have gathered several very precise facts proving that your father, Mr. Burdovsky, a totally impractical man, having received 15,000 as your mother's dowry, abandoned his job, got into commercial ventures, was cheated, lost his capital, could not bear his grief, began to drink, which caused his illness, and finally died prematurely, in the 8th year of his marriage to your mother. Then, according to your mother's own testimony, she was left destitute and would have perished altogether without the constant and magnanimous assistance of Pavlishchev, who gave her up to 600 rubles a year as support. Then there are countless testimonies that he was extremely fond of you as a child. According to these testimonies, and again with your mother's confirmation, it appears that he loved you mainly because as a child you had a speech defect and the look of a cripple, a pathetic, miserable child, and Pavlishchev, as I have deduced from precise evidence, had all his life a certain tender inclination towards everything oppressed and wronged by nature, especially in children, a fact, in my conviction, of extreme importance for our affair.